We all know that technology has transformed and is continuing to transform much of what was familiar to us. In fact, this accelerating change is perhaps the defining feature of our times and explains many of the other cultural and political transformations around us. Most directly, it affects the jobs that are available, which have changed dramatically. Entire industries have been created or wholly transformed. Jobs have disappeared and new jobs have emerged. So how will this affect jobs in the future? It is undeniable that the automation of many tasks will transform the jobs that there will be available, and some estimates are that half of jobs will disappear as a result. Others go much further and think that AI or deep AI will essentially erase most jobs, if not all, except for those of the programmers, designers, or owners of the robots. Algorithms and robots will be able to mimic every task, including those that have been hardest to automate, from taking care of the elderly and children to building infrastructure, as well as all current white-collar jobs. Beyond the hype and fear-mongering, what does the empirical evidence say? The first thing to note is that at some level, all changes so far have been part of processes of transformation similar to previous historical periods that have not had the catastrophic effects some predict. For instance, in the United States, 41% of all jobs were in agriculture in 1900, and by 2000 there were no more than 2%. Yet unemployment is at the lowest level it has ever been. Arguably, the latest wave of technological change resembles this. Research suggests that especially big technological advances generate many new jobs. As an illustration, there are more retail banking jobs now than when ATMs were first introduced in the 70s. Cost efficiencies generated by automation of routine processes created opportunities for greater investments in sales teams and others. Secondly, however, it is clear that there are challenges too. The impact of automation on the labor force differs by socioeconomic level and will be concentrated in certain geographies. In what we know so far, from research of David Autor, David Dorn and others, there has been a U-shaped impact since the 1980s on employment levels, whereby it has been middle-skilled professional jobs that have been eroded. This has meant profiles such as machine operators in factories of all kinds or clerks in offices have virtually disappeared. By contrast, there are now more managerial level jobs and more low-skilled jobs, such as many in the hospitality industry or in health, and they earn more than they used to. Naturally, a lot of these jobs are concentrated in industrial areas, now post-industrial. Since the 1990s to the most recent data, 2015, employment in industry has been reduced by a third in Western countries, going from 36% to 27% of all employment in Germany, 25% to 20% in the US, or 32 to 19% of all employment in Spain. What will the consequences of these transformations be? These uneven fates for different groups promise to create ever-growing backlashes. It is not hard to reach the conclusion that a large part of the turmoil in politics we experience, from Trump to Brexit to waves of nationalism across countries, is related to the dislocation of traditional industries. As an example, in a survey we did this year at the IE Center for the Governance of Change, we see that 3/4 of Europeans are now in favor of very robust government interventions, more so than any discussed on the public domain, such as forbidding the introduction of more machines if they will displace workers, introducing special taxes on companies that replace workers, or outright banning the use of machines except in dangerous or unhealthy tasks. It is not all bad news, though. We know some of what can be done. In my own research, with collaborators at Stanford and New York University, we have established that historic investments in higher education mitigate the negative regional effects that having high levels of exposure to routine occupations since the 70s has on the share of population that is employed. Education, especially investments in community colleges, tertiary post-16 vocational education, really pays off in terms of mitigating negative effects of automation on employment. Moreover, we also show that these investments have the effect of moderating the politics of these disruptive transformations. We show that for US counties that spend relatively more in higher education, this spending causes them to swing less towards voting for anti-government candidates such as Donald Trump from the 1980s to the mid-2010s. We also show that in those counties, citizens are more supportive of government spending in higher education and of government spending overall, presumably because they see how effective government intervention can be in mitigating negative outcomes. In summary then, it is undeniable that there will be many challenges ahead for jobs, and that many in the developed world, especially the middle classes, have been challenged and continue to be challenged. But we know at least that government spending, if well targeted, such as in investments that can directly create opportunities for citizens, has been effective. Through that effectiveness in creating opportunity, it can serve to moderate some of the positions that politics has taken in recent times throughout the developed world.